Hello, my fellow nerds out there. Welcome back to Little Shop of Nerds. If you want to know about Little Shop of Nerds, like and subscribe to the podcast. And right now, here's the two co-hosts you want to talk to. Hi, my name's Mike,
And I'm Julia.
and welcome back. Julia, we're going to have a good episode today. You know why?
Why is that?
We are going to talk about one of my favorite movies today.
Oh, and what movie is that?
Picture this, the 1980s. Huey Lewis singing about the power of love. Indiana Jones was still young enough to outrun a boulder. But we're not going to talk about those two today. Today we're going to talk about an awesome romance movie that you can watch with your loved one or pretty much maybe the whole family. And today, the movie we're going to be talking about, before I get into it, if you remember our last episode, I give you a hint what our current episode was going to be about. And the hint was As You Wish. And if you didn't get the answer, I'm going to give you the answer. Today's episode, we're going to be talking about The Princess Bride. And fellas, before you say anything, oh, that's a chick flick. I tell you, it's not. It's got pretty much everything. It's got fencing, fighting, torture, revenge, giants, monsters, chases, escapes, true love, and miracles.
That's right. It's such a great, a great movie to watch with, your boyfriend or girlfriend or your significant other, your whole family, your parents. It's fun for the whole family. It's on Disney Plus too if you have Disney Plus.
And guys, before you Disney Plus and bust, watch it. It's actually a good film.
It is a very good film. So, if you guys are not familiar with The Princess Bride, I'll have Mike explain it.
Well, like it says, it's a fantasy movie. Pretty good, pretty awesome. How it starts with, I'll just give you a short synopsis of it. But if you haven't watched it, stop here, go watch it, and come back and we'll talk about it.
Because there will be spoilers.
And also, if you guys listen to this before watching it, that's not on us, that's on you. No offense.
Yeah, we did warn you that there will be spoilers.
And here we go. The movie starts off with a young Fred Savage. And all of you younger folks out there who Fred Savage is, go to your parents or grandparents. They'll tell you who he is.
Yeah.
And so far, he's pretty much sick in bed, isn't he? He's pretty much.
And it does look like it's around Christmas time, judging by the decorations in his room. And when his mom opens up the curtains in his room, you see Christmas lights up.
Yeah, and you can tell this is pretty much an 80s setup because you can actually see him playing Atari.
Yeah. Playing an old baseball game on the Atari.
In my opinion, I'm surprised it wasn't Nintendo.
I'm surprised too, yeah.
Yeah, you know what I mean? It's like, I'm surprised it wasn't Nintendo. Anyways, back to the synopsis. It's, he's sick. His mom said, hey, your grandfather's here. He come to see you because he know you were sick. And his grandfather comes. He gives him a present. And he's like a little excited about it. He opens it. He opens it up. And it's a book called The Princess Bride.
By S. Morgenstein.
And yes, it's a real book. We did our homework on it.
Yes, the guy that, the S. Morgenstein dude that's mentioned, that wrote the book and the movie, actually wrote the real book. His name's William Goldman, and that was like his pen name, and he actually wrote the screenplay for The Princess Bride.
That's cool. And once he gave him his book, he says, a book? And you pretty much tell that Grandpa has that old person attitude. It's like, back in my day, television was called books. And he says, why I'm here, I'm going to read this to you. Because since you're sick, my dad did it for me when I was sick. I did it with your father. I'm going to do it with you today.
And it just makes me wonder what happened to his father. Like, maybe his father is at work, or he might be dead, might not be in the picture, might be, active duty military, we don't know.
Yeah, it could be any one of those.
Yeah.
But right now, I think it's just focusing on the story. And now here's the thing: the movie will cut back to Fred Savage and the guy who's playing the grandfather. So just get used to that a little bit. But it's a good film. And what happens? He's reading the book, and the two main characters are a poor farm boy named Wesley and a girl named Buttercup. And I know you're right, Buttercup, that's like a horse's name, but trust us, it is, but just roll with it. And how they started off, I think they did like each other, but she kind of...
When the grandfather was reading the book, he said that she liked to torment the farm boy. And every time she would ask him to do something, he would say, "As you wish."
And "as you wish" was the sign of him telling her, "I love you," pretty much.
And then one day she realized that she loved him too. And the day that she told him, or that she made him realize that she loved him, was they were in the kitchen. She was making something. He brought in some firewood. And she's like, "Farm boy." And he just kind of stops and looks at her and says, she's looking around wildly, trying to find something to say. And she goes, "Fetch me that pitcher," which was right above her head. She could definitely have gotten it herself if she wanted it. But he came over, he picked it up, and he handed it to her. And he goes, "As you wish." And then she smiled. And I'm sitting there cringing a little bit, because you can definitely tell it's 80s. 80s cringe.
80s cheese. You can tell from it. But besides that, they fall in love with each other, and they want to have a marriage, but they couldn't afford it. So Wesley went on it.
He was going to find job or find work or something.
On a ship. I think it was trading, maybe. And he does that, and somehow he dies.
Yeah, his ship got attacked by the Dread Pirate Roberts.
And you're like, what do you mean he died? You say he's the main character. Hold your shorts on, we'll get to that.
We'll get to that, yeah. So, 5 years later, Buttercup is introduced to the people as Princess Buttercup, because Prince Humperdinck...
Sounds like a tool.
...wants to marry her, even though she doesn't love him. And he knows that she doesn't love him, but he's like, "Oh, she'll come to love me." And it's like, nah, bitch. She's in love with Wesley. She always will be in love with Wesley. You are just your tool.
Yeah, get going, man.
So she goes riding on her horse, because that's the only thing that she really enjoyed, was riding her horse. And she comes upon 3 guys. Fezzik, Vicini, and
Inigo Montoya.
Inigo Montoya, yes. And I can't believe I forgot his name. And she comes upon them, and they basically kidnap her to kill her. And they're going to frame Gilder, which was the country across the sea. They're going to frame them to start a war between Florin, which is the country that they live in, and Gilder.
And if you want to know who's who, Fezzik is the Giant, which is played by Andre the Giant. And you're going to be like, all you wrestling fans, you know who's going to be who he is. But you new ones, you're not going to know who he is. Ask your parents, look it up. Or pretty much nowadays, we're always going to say, just Google it.
Yeah, Andre the Giant died back in 1993. I can't remember what he died from, but he passed away in 93. So Vicini is played by Wallace Shawn, which a lot of you probably remember who he is. He played Rex in
Toy Story,
the Toy Story movies. And then Mandy Patinkin, I do believe, plays Inigo. He was actually in Criminal Minds for a little bit until he had to quit because it was taking a toll on his mental health.
Right. And so far, how it goes, after Buttercup gets captured by the three of them, they pretty much take her across the sea, and water's filled with, was it leeches or
They were screaming eels.
eels? That's what it is.
And they were gonna eat her.
And even the part where the grandfather's like, she doesn't get eaten. It's like, what? I just want to tell you that because you look a little scared.
Yeah, he looked a little concerned, and he's like, I want to tell you that she doesn't get eaten. He goes, I wasn't afraid or something. He goes, I was just a little concerned. He goes, but it's not the same thing.
Yep. And pretty much after they rescue her, but there was a guy who kept following them, and they thought it was a fisherman, but he kept following him, and Fassini kept getting pissed off, saying, "Conceivable, inconceivable." I'm sorry, I'm bad with pronunciations. Please forgive me. I'm surprised how I graduated high school, but anyways.
I'm surprised too.
I know, right? I think my teacher's like, let's get this dumb fuck out of here.
So anyways, so they make it to the Cliffs of Insanity. And the only person that could climb up those cliffs was Fezzik. So they had made like a little harness to where all three of them would be hanging off of Fezzik as he's climbing up the rope. And then the man in black, which they call him when he shows up, he starts going up the rope after them, and they're like, Fassini is like, inconceivable, like, it shouldn't be happening, but it was. They get up, before the man in black catches up with them, and they cut the rope, and he doesn't fall. The man in black doesn't fall, but he starts climbing the side of the cliff, and they're like, that's crazy. So they tell Inigo to take care of him with the sword, and Vizzini and Fezzik run off with Buttercup.
And here's the thing. He's waiting for him to climb up, and even he's like, no, it'd be help if you throw the rope down. If I did, that might not be a good idea.
Because I'm a Spaniard. And he's like, oh no, I'm known to many Spaniards. So then he goes, is there anything that I can do to make you believe me? He goes, nothing comes to mind. And he looks at him, he goes, I swear on the sword of my father, Domingo Montoya, you will reach the top alive. Reach the top alive. And he goes, throw me the rope. So then he throws him the rope and helps the man in black up to the top of the cliff.
And he climbs up and he gets up there. And Indigo's like, no, just rest for a bit, then we can do it. And I think I kind of like Indigo doing that because you can tell he's a man of talents, but he also knows his way because he's a thief, but he also has class because he knows I'm not going to fight someone who's not ready yet because at least he knows that.
I mean, he is a man of honor.
Yeah, and he does. He gives the man in black his little side story. And
his backstory, talking about how he's on the hunt for a six-fingered man because the six-fingered man killed his father for a sword that, basically the sword that Inigo uses now.
And this is when we get our second famous quote from the movie. Hello, my name is Inigo Montoya. You have killed my father. Prepare to die. And there you go. And remember that quote, because it will come back later in the movie.
It comes up a lot. It's probably the most famous quote out of the entire movie. Yeah. Everybody quotes it. So they have a little duel, and of course, the man in black wins, knocks out Inigo.
He doesn't kill him, but he knocks him out.
Just knocks him out, and he runs off after Fassini and Fezzik. So the Fassini sees that the man in black is running after them, so he leaves Fezzik behind, and he goes off after, he goes further into Gilder with Buttercup, because he is going to, basically, he wants to kill her and start a war. So then he shows up with Fezzik. The Man in Black shows up where Fezzik is, and then they have like a little hand-to-hand combat. No weapons.
Pretty much just wrestling mostly.
Yeah. And then the Man in Black does end up choking out Fezzik. Doesn't kill him, just
pretty much gave him in his sleeping hole, pretty much.
Yeah, got him in a sleeper hold and knocked him out. And he's like, he goes, I won't envy the headache you have, but until then dream of large women. And then he runs off after Vizzini and Buttercup.
And that's one thing I like about Fezzik. He's actually a decent fellow too.
Yeah,
again,
he seems like more of a gentle giant.
Yeah, and even he says, "You know what? Let's just." Even where Vizzini says, "Throw the rock and hit him," he's like, "My way's not really sporty."
Yeah, sportsmanlike.
Yeah. So, and that's when he says, "No, let's just do skill against skill, no weapons." And that's also another thing I like about those two characters. They're pretty much, they're thieves, but yet they're at least with class a little.
I don't know. To me, Fezzik seems kind of like Hagrid from Harry Potter. Just kind of like a gentle giant type of guy.
R.M.P. Robbie Coltrane.
Yeah. So, around this time, Prince Humperdinck and his little entourage, the Tool.
A giant Tool.
Shows up on the Cliffs of Insanity. And he was like running around in his little dress, and he's just like, there was a mighty duel, and he goes, the loser ran off that way. He goes, but the winner ran off to Gilder. He goes, we gotta go after the winner because the loser means nothing. So they go out and they follow the footprints, basically the footprints of the Man in Black, since the Man in Black won.
Very much so. And after he beats Fezzik, he catch up with Vizzini. Sorry again. I know you're going to be like, you can't pronounce right. Trust me, I'm trying. But after he catches up with him, they have one more task, which is the Battle of Wits.
And it's to the death.
Battle of Wits, that kind of reminds me of a test I had to take in high school. It's like, who won? Oh, shit, I got an F.
So the Battle of Wits was basically the Man in Black. If you haven't already guessed who the Man in Black is now, I kind of gave it away. So the Man in Black has some iocane powder, which is a poison, and it dissolves instantly in liquid and has no taste or smell. So the Man in Black takes the goblets of wine, and he pours it into one of the goblets. And he says, okay, he puts it back in front of him and says, okay, the Battle of Wits has begun. It ends when you tell me which goblet has the poison and we both drink. And, of course, Vizzini keeps stalling, and then he goes, oh my god, what is that there? And when the Man in Black turns his back, he switches the glasses. And then he goes, oh, I thought I saw something. He goes, but now let's drink me from your glass and me from mine. Or you from your glass, me from mine. And they pick it up and they take a drink. And then the Man in Black says, you lost. And he goes, no, you only think I lost. That, I switched glasses while your back was turned. And he goes, there's a line, and it was, never go up against a Sicilian when death is on the line. And then he's just like, ah, ha, 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 just keeps laughing, and then he goes, ha, ha, and then he falls over dead. And when he unties Buttercup, she goes, and to think it was your glass that was poisoned all along. And he goes, both glasses were poisoned. He had put the iocane powder in both glasses. He had been building up an immunity so he wouldn't, succumb to the poison.
Hey, it's Hey, it's a better way to cheat on that thing.
Yeah. So, at this point, Prince Humperdinck, aka the Giant Tool, has found Fezzik, or he hasn't found Fezzik because Fezzik ran off at that point. So he, was like, someone's beaten a giant, and then eventually they found, Vicini dead, and they were, they continue to follow the footprints or whatever. And this so while this is going on, the Man in Black and Buttercup are having a conversation about
Wesley, pretty much.
Yeah, because he's like, oh yeah, I remember Wesley. He's like, he talked about, a woman that he was in love with and stuff like that. But the Man in Black is now the Dread Pirate Roberts. We have found out that he's the Dread Pirate Roberts. And she's like, well, you killed my love. And he was like, I don't believe that. He's like, would you did you wait a day until you got engaged, or did you wait an entire week out of respect for the dead? And she goes, I died that day. Because she lost, the love of her life. And
she pretty much pushed him down the hill, and here's when she pushed him down the hill, and this is what he says, as you wish.
And she realized that it was actually Wesley, and she goes after him, and then they go into the fire swamp, and
with giant rodents, fire coming out of the pits, and
she catches on fire. She falls into like a sand trap, almost gets eaten by a giant rodent, and then they get out and come face to face with the tool.
Yeah, and before that, Wesley tells her what happened during SC. He did get captured by the dreadful Pirate Robertson.
Dread Pirate Roberts.
And Roberts, yeah, sorry. There is a difference. But anyways, he kept saying, like he was pretty much part of his crew, and he kept always saying, good night, Wesley. And
it was good night, Wesley. Good work, but I might kill you again, and I might kill you in the morning.
And here's the thing. Wesley was doing so much of a good job on the ship, the dreadful Pirate Roberts wanted to retire. But here's the thing. Here's the thing that gets a little funny. His real name, the dreadful Pirate Roberts, that's not his real name.
I think it was like Ryan or something like
Ronald,
that.
It was Ronald, yeah.
And then they found out that the Dread Pirate Roberts before him also was not the Dread Pirate Roberts. And the Dread Pirate Roberts had been retired for 15 years and was living on an island.
Like a king.
And so he made Wesley
the new Dread Pirate Roberts.
Yeah, they basically took on a whole new crew. He stayed on for a little bit, was calling him Roberts until the whole crew believed that he was the Dread Pirate Roberts. And then but then Wesley was like, since I have found you and we're back together, I will retire from being a pirate so, we can be together. And
you all start going to wonder, is like, why did he have to be called the Dread Pirate Robertson? Well, that's it. The formal guy said it's about the name. Because no one's going to be afraid of the Dread Pirate Wesley.
Yeah, so when they get out of the fire swamp, they come face to face with the Tool and Count Rugen. Count Rugen. And they're kind of fighting because Wesley doesn't want to let go of Buttercup now that he's got her again. But she's like, if I can save you, this time, I will. And she's like, just promise not to hurt him. We'll surrender. Don't hurt him. I'll go back with you. That type of thing. And he's like, of course we won't hurt him. But he tells Count Rugen when we get back to Florin, throw him into the Pit of Despair. Which we'll talk about the Pit of Despair here in a minute. Mm-hmm. So then when they take Wesley up to Count Rugen, he goes, or Count Rugen says, please, or he's like, right this way, sir. I'll take you back to your ship. And he goes, We are a man of action. Lies do not become us. Because he knew that he was lying. And then he looks at his hand. And he sees that he has 6 fingers on his right hand. And he goes, I noticed you have 6 fingers. Someone was looking for you. And then they knocked him out.
And that's pretty much it. And they get to the pit of despair. And the guy who helps dress his wound is an albino. And this is funny. He kind of just does this little Golem impression.
Yeah.
And he just like coughs. He's like, and he does his normal voice, which I think that's freaking hilarious.
Yeah. So they find out that he's to be tortured. So then Buttercup is extremely depressed when she gets back to the castle, and they think that it's just because my dad is sick, and he's like, yeah, of course, but really it wasn't because he was sick. It was because she was depressed about Wesley.
And also didn't want to marry a giant tool.
Yeah. So then there is a little sequence where he's like,
write the letters. I'll send them.
No. Before that, she was getting the king had died that night, and then the next day she greeted the people as their queen, and he's like, there's this old woman. She's like, boo, boo, you're the queen of filth, the queen of refuse. You marry another while your true love still lives. You basically abandoned your true love. And she was calling her all sorts of names. And even the grandson was getting upset because he's like, she's supposed to marry Wesley, but she's marrying Prince Humperdinck, and what's going on? And he's like, the grandfather almost stopped reading at that point because he was getting a little too excited.
And he said, well, that's not fair. And he's like, who says life was fair?
Yeah. Like, there is a line that Wesley says before we find out that it's Wesley, and he says, life is pain. Anyone who's selling you something, or anyone who says otherwise is selling something.
And pretty much, it was just a dream sequence that Buttercup had, and she goes to Humperdinck, and she says, no, I don't want to do this. And he's like, I don't want to cause you pain. Just write a letter. I'll send out my 4 fastest ships to find him. And pretty much, as a giant tool he is, that's pretty much a fucking lie.
Yeah,
Sorry.
He doesn't send out the letters, but we don't find that out until later. But they do start to torture Wesley. It was some device, and it sucks a year, or it can suck years. They just suck a year off of him, and then he cries because lost a year of his life.
And what's also kind of weird? Even the 6-finger man asked him, he's like, it's kind of like he's doing a survey.
Yeah.
And he's like, that's how messed up it is. He's like, remember, be truthful. And I'm like,
yeah, the way that he says it makes it sound like it was a survey. So anyways,
Humperdinck gets pissed. He goes, lifts up the lever, pretty much
to 50,
and even the 6-finger man's like, no,
not to 50, and it basically sucked all of Wesley's life away.
And Humperdinck was pretty much, and Humperdinck had the same idea that Vizzini had. He wanted to kill.
No. He had paid Vizzini to kidnap Buttercup and kill her on their engagement day.
So he can start a war. That's what it was. He just wanted to start a war.
Yeah, so he was actually behind the whole Buttercup getting kidnapped. He was behind all of that.
And
like the giant tool that he is.
He is a giant tool. And what he does, he goes to a thief town, get everyone trying to blame it on Gilda, whatever. And that's where we find Indigo and Fezzik. Indigo was pretty much in the bottle.
Yeah, Indigo was drunk. He reunites with Fezzik. And then Fezzik kind of... Now, this is all happening on the wedding day of Buttercup and Prince Humperdinck. So, there's a lot that's happening within, those few hours. And he Fezzik he nurses Inigo back to health, and
Get ready if it's hot.
they were like, oh, so we need to find the man in black. He's the only one that can help us, get our revenge. And they find him
in the
pit of despair, basically dead.
And they take him to a miracle worker named Miracle Max, and he's played by Billy Crystal. And you're going to be like, what's Billy Crystal? Again, Google it or ask your grandparents.
He's also in Howl's Moving Castle as Calcifer.
And pretty much, and I think it's like a North New York style accent he has or something like that. Or maybe because of his, I think he's Jewish, so that too. And he's like, and I have to tell you, the makeup work they did to make him look old was brilliant. Even during the 80s standards, it was brilliant. Nowadays, it's done by computer, and it's pretty crappy how they do that.
Yeah. And so they come in with, dead Wesley, and they put him down, and he's like, yeah, I'll take a look at him. And he goes, you got money? And he's like 65. He's like, ooh, I never worked for so little. And he goes, except for once, and it was a noble cause. And Inigo starts giving him this story about how his wife was, Wesley's wife was sick, and his children were on the brink of starvation. And he was like, he's like, you're a terrible liar. And then he gives him the real reason that he needed him to, help get his revenge for his father's killer. And he goes, your first
story was better.
Your first story was better. So then they get the bellows, and he puffs some air into him, and he goes, hey there. Well, they find out that he's mostly dead. I should probably mention
he's
that.
like, there's dead, and there's mostly dead. It's like, and they ask, like, what happens if he's like, what happens if he's dead? He's like, go through his pockets and look for loose change.
Yeah. He goes, but he's mostly dead. So they pump some air into him, and then he goes, hello there, what do you got to live for? And he pushes on his chest, and he says, true love. And then he's like, there you go, true love. You can't ask for a more noble cause. And he goes, no. He didn't say true love. He said to blave. And we all know that to blave means to bluff. And then here comes this woman like, liar, liar, liar. And
it's Miracle Max's wife,
Valerie.
Yeah, and it's funny when she comes up, he's like, back you witch. It's like, I'm not a witch, I'm your wife.
And then she's like, you know that he said true love. And she runs around, she chases him around the room saying, Humperdinck, 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 because he doesn't like Prince Humperdinck because Prince Humperdinck fired him.
And here's the funny part, when Indigo says, if you help us, we'll humiliate Humperdinck. He's like, that's a noble cause.
Yeah, so he's like, give me the 65.
I'm on the hour.
Yeah, and then they made him like some sort of pill, and they coated it in chocolate, and then they take mostly dead Wesley to the church or wherever that the wedding was going to be, and they give him the pill. He wakes up, and then they start fighting their way into
pretty much the whole thing. But they gave him the pill. But here's the thing: it worked fast, but he's not fully up to speed. Like, he can barely stand. He can't stand, so he can only move his head and his finger.
Yeah, which apparently he was moving that pretty quickly too, because they didn't think he'd be able to do it that quickly. And then eventually he was able to do more than just move his head and his fingers.
Yeah, and then we have him going through the castle, get in the castle, get in and out. And Indigo has his battle with the Sixth Finger Man. And you know how I said about that one quote is going to come back? And when Indigo is ready to meet his maker, and he says, Father, I have failed you. And yet, he had the strength to go on by saying that catchphrase. Hello, my name is Indigo Montoya. You have killed my father. Prepare to die. He keeps saying that. And the guy he's fighting with, he's like, stop saying that.
But he just keeps saying it, and then he eventually does get his revenge. And then he goes, offer me anything I want, and Count Rugen is like, anything. And he goes, "Give me back my father, you son of a bitch." And then he stabs him in the chest, pushes him back, and he's dead.
Yeah, and pretty much Princess Buttercup is ready to kill herself because he didn't want to do it. And once she's ready, he's like, and you hear Wesley's like, there's a lot of beautiful breasts in the world. It'd be a shame to ruin yours.
Yeah, and then she's like, "Oh, Wesley," and she goes over and she basically straddles him on the bed. And
she thinks, and here's the thing, she wants to be with Wesley, but they said she said, "I'm married to Humperdinck," and he's like, "Did you say I do?" He's like, "No." Kind of skipped that part. Well, you're not really married.
Yeah, because during the marriage, or when they went to get married, the impressive clergyman is what they call him. He goes, "Marriage. Marriage is what brings us together today."
Sounds like Upper Flood almost.
And he talks in that weird way, and then he gets to the end. He's like, "Love, true love," and then Humperdinck is like, he goes, skip to the end, and then he goes, "Do you have the rings?" And as they're going to put the rings on, they hear the fighting, and she's like, "That's my Wesley now." And then it was taking too long, so then he goes, "Same man and wife, same man and wife." And then the clergyman is like, "Man and wife." And
yep, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
And pretty much when Wesley says, "Well, you're technically not married," and he looks at Humperdinck, like, "Oh, it's just a how do you pronounce that? Technicality."
Technicality, yeah.
And he's like, then Wesley's going to tell him what he's going to do. But here's the thing, Wesley can't stand yet. But Humperdinck thinks, no, he's just stalling pretty much. And Wesley stands and he points his sword at him and is like, "Drop your sword." And he drops it.
And then he tells Humperdinck to sit down, and he does. And then he tells Buttercup to tie him up, and then he kind of just almost falls. And Inigo comes in, he's like, "Help him up," and she's like, "What does Wesley need helping with?" And he's like, "He's been mostly dead, he can't really stand." He was like, "Yeah, he was bluffing, I knew he was bluffing." And then Inigo pointed his sword at him and was like, "You want me to dispatch him?" He's like, "No, he's gonna let him live." So then they they hear Fezzik calling for them outside, and he had 4 white horses. So he's like, "There's 3 of us, and if we ever find the lady, we
need the fourth
one." He's like, "Hi, lady," and she waved back, and then they jumped out the window, and they rode off into the sunset.
And the grandpa was stopped there, and he's like, "Why did you?" And the grandson's like, "Why did you stop?" "Oh, there's kissing. You don't want to hear that." And he's like, "Well, I don't mind anymore." So he goes, and he says, "There has been 5 powerful kisses," and they said this was the one. And pretty much they kiss around the sunset, sunrise. Mm-hmm. Okay, that sounds like never mind. That's not.
That's really corny. No, I think the sun was setting or something like that, or the sun was rising or something. And then they kiss, and then that's basically where it ends. And
the grandson's like, "Hey, can you come back and read it to me again?" And he says, "As you wish."
Yeah.
And that's pretty much the movie. I know it took us a little long to get through the synopsis, but bear with us. And in my opinion, I think it's a good film to watch. 8 out of 10.
Yeah.
Not maybe 10 out of 10, but maybe some 8. But if you guys go back, look at the fight scene between the Man in Black and Indigo, you can definitely see the match.
Yeah, I've actually noticed too that during the scene where Inigo flips over the Man in Black when they're fighting, I don't think that was the actor. I think it was a stunt double. Because there seemed to have been some, obviously.
Yeah.
There seemed to have been some minor differences, and I didn't really notice it until last night.
Yeah.
I was rewatching it.
And that too, pretty much. And I don't think there's a lot of theories around that story.
No, there's nothing around it. I haven't seen any theories about it because it's pretty straightforward.
And I think it's true. And like I said, it's a good 80s film to watch. And I recommend watching it with your family, or if you don't have a family, you don't have kids, Watch it with your girlfriend, boyfriend,
Significant other.
or your three couples. Sorry, we're living in the day of age of polyamory. I gotta
That's
mention
why it
that.
says significant others. That covers it.
Well, either way, it's a perfect date movie to watch, in my opinion. Or if you're a big fan of fantasies, give it a go. It's on Disney Plus. I would give it a watch, and like I said, I think you can never go wrong with it. It's pretty much held up good for years, and pretty much. And I have to say, Disney, if you remake this film, I am not going to see it.
I won't see it either. It doesn't need a remake. It's perfect the way that it is.
Stop making remakes. We don't need them.
Okay, so I guess that's where we're gonna end it here. I will give you the clue for our next episode. Cat and rat.
And
So we will see you guys next time. Bye.
come back and like and subscribe.
Yep, like and subscribe. Bye.
See ya.